The vast emptiness of space surrounded the small Earth vessel Horizon *. Captain James Miller sat in his command chair, fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. Their mission was simple: explore the outer edges of the solar system and gather data. No one expected to find anything unusual, let alone make first contact with an alien species. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said Tom, the ship's sensor operator. "It's big, and it's not one of ours." Miller leaned forward. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a massive vessel unlike anything humans had built. It was angular, covered in what looked like armored plates, with strange symbols etched across its hull. "Are they responding to our signals?" Miller asked. "No, sir. Wait. They're scanning us." The lights on the Horizon dimmed momentarily as the alien ship's scanning beam passed through them. Miller felt a cold sweat forming on his brow. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Today, they had their answer. "Sir, they're opening a communication channel." Miller straightened his uniform. "Put it through." The screen changed to show a creature that made everyone on the bridge gasp. It had 6 eyes arranged in a circle, scaly gray skin, and a mouth full of small, sharp teeth. Its head was hairless and seemed too large for its thin body. "Attention, Earth vessel," the alien said in surprisingly good English. "I am Commander Krell of the Vordax Hegemony. Your system is now under our protection. Surrender your vessel immediately." Miller tried to keep his voice steady. "This is Captain James Miller of Earth. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We mean no harm." Commander Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your intentions are irrelevant. The hegemony has claimed this sector. Resistance is not advised. We possess weapons your primitive species cannot imagine. Do not force me to unleash the beasts upon you." Before Miller could respond, a scratching sound came from behind the bridge door. The crew turned to see Max, Miller's golden retriever, pawing at the door. Miller had brought his dog on this year-long mission because he couldn't bear to leave him behind. The ship's designers had made special accommodations for the captain's companion. "Not now, Max," Miller whispered, but it was too late. Someone had already opened the door, and Max bounded onto the bridge, tail wagging happily. He trotted right up to Miller and sat beside the command chair, tongue lolling out of his mouth. Miller looked back at the screen to apologize for the interruption, and froze. Commander Krell had backed away from the camera. All 6 of his eyes were wide with what appeared to be fear. "What is that creature?" Krell demanded, his voice higher than before. "Why have you brought a beast to Cure Command Center?" Miller glanced down at Max in confusion. This is just my dog. He's harmless." "Harmless," Krell hissed. "You keep predators as companions. How do you control such a monster?" The bridge crew exchanged puzzled looks. Max was currently scratching behind his ear with his hind leg. "He's not a monster," Miller said slowly. "He's a pet, a friend." Commander Krell turned to speak to someone off-screen, his voice urgent in a language the translation software couldn't catch. When he faced the camera again, his demeanor had changed completely. "Earth vessel, we will reconsider our approach. Remain where you are. Do not advance further. Any aggressive move will be met with force." The transmission cut off abruptly. Miller looked down at Max, who was now resting his head on Miller's knee, looking up with soulful brown eyes. "What just happened?" Tom asked. Miller scratched Max behind the ears. "I think we just found out something very interesting about our new neighbors. Get me Earth Command. They're going to want to hear about this." Max wagged his tail, completely unaware that he had just changed the course of human history. 3 days after the encounter with the Vordax ship, Captain Miller found himself sitting in a conference room at Earth Command. The circular table was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. Max lay at Miller's feet, occasionally looking up when someone raised their voice. "Let me get this straight," said General Adams, tapping his pen against a stack of papers. These aliens, the Vordax, were ready to claim our entire solar system, but they backed off because they saw a dog. Dr. Wilson, the head cynobiologist, adjusted her glasses. Based on our analysis of the video footage, yes. Their reaction to Max was immediate and seemed instinctive. Look here. She pointed to a screen showing a freeze frame of Commander Krill's face when Max had first appeared. The alien's 6 eyes were widened, and his body was leaning away from the camera. That's pure fear, she said. Not calculated, not diplomatic, genuine fear. But why? Asked one of the officials. Max is hardly threatening. Dr. Wilson pulled up another image, this one a diagram of the Vordax physiology based on their brief encounter. We believe the Vordax evolved from prey species. Note the eyes positioned for wide-angle vision, the small teeth designed for plant matter, the thin limbs built for speed. Everything about them suggests creatures that were hunted, not hunters. Miller scratched Max behind the ears. And dogs evolved from wolves, predators. Exactly, Dr. Wilson nodded. To them, Max isn't a friendly pet. He's a monster from their evolutionary nightmares. The room fell silent as everyone considered this information. Then a woman in a dark suit at the end of the table spoke up. She hadn't introduced herself, but Miller guessed she was from intelligence. We've intercepted some Vordax communications, she said. They've been monitoring our broadcasts for years. That's how they learned our language. But they've misinterpreted much of what they've seen. She tapped on her tablet, and the main screen filled with images from Earth. People walking dogs in parks, police with K9 units, families playing with pets. They believe we've domesticated natural predators as weapons, she continued. They think we're controlling these beasts with our minds or through some advanced technology. It's why they approached us so aggressively. They're terrified of us. General Adams leaned back in his chair. So what about these beasts Krell threatened to unleash? Our analysts believe they're referring to biological weapons, the intelligence officer replied. The Vordax appear to have conquered their sector through intimidation and these weapons, not through actual military superiority. Miller looked down at Max, who was now snoring softly. So my dog accidentally revealed their bluff. It seems so, Dr. Wilson said. And now we have an advantage they don't know we have. General Adams stood up, pacing around the table. We need to use this. If they think we control predators, let's play into that fear. Sir, Miller said, are you suggesting we weaponize our pets? Not weaponize, the general replied. Leverage. Captain Miller, how would you feel about leading a diplomatic mission to the Vordax ship, with Max as your security detail? Before Miller could respond, Dr. Wilson interjected. We need to be careful. If we push too hard, they might panic and attack out of fear. Remember, cornered animals are the most dangerous. The intelligence officer nodded in agreement. Their communication suggests they're debating whether to retreat from our system or launch a preemptive strike. They're scared, but they're also proud. We need to find the right balance. Miller looked down at Max, who had woken up and was now looking at him with those trusting eyes. So the fate of Earth-Vordax relations depends on my dog's ability to be simultaneously scary and friendly. General Adams smiled for the first time. Welcome to interstellar diplomacy, Captain Miller. It's not what any of us expected. As the meeting continued, Miller couldn't help but wonder what Commander Krell would think if he knew that the terrifying beast currently intimidating the Vordax military was mostly concerned with when he would get his next treat. Captain Miller stood in the docking bay of the Vordax flagship, trying to keep his breathing steady. Beside him, Max sat patiently, his leash loose in Miller's hand. The golden retriever seemed completely unaware of the tension in the air as he watched the large metal door with mild curiosity. Remember the plan, said Dr. Wilson's voice through the small earpiece Miller wore. Be respectful but confident. Don't show fear. And don't let Max get too excited. Easy for you to say, Miller muttered. You're safe on the Horizon while I'm about to meet aliens who think my dog is a weapon of mass destruction. The massive door slid open with a hiss, revealing a long corridor lined with Vordak soldiers. Each one held what appeared to be a weapon, though none were pointed directly at Miller. Their 6 eyes tracked Max's every movement. "Greetings," Miller said, raising his hand in what Earth Command had decided was a universal gesture of peace. "I am Captain James Miller, representing Earth." A Vordak stepped forward, taller than the others, and wearing ornate armor with symbols that glinted under the ship's lights. "Commander Krell." "Captain Miller," Krell said, his voice less hostile than during their first communication, but still wary. "Follow me to the meeting chamber. Keep your companion under control." As they walked, Miller noticed how the Vordak soldiers pressed themselves against the walls, creating as much distance as possible between themselves and Max. For his part, Max trotted happily along, occasionally glancing at the aliens with friendly interest. "Why does the beast not attack?" one soldier whispered in their language, not realizing Miller's earpiece contained a translation device. "The human controls it with his mind," another answered. "That is why we must be careful." Miller bit back a smile. Earth Command had guessed correctly about the Vordak's misunderstanding. He gave Max's leash a gentle tug as they entered a large circular room with a table in the center. "Please be seated," Krell said, motioning to a chair across from his own. The other Vordak's officials remained standing, positioned far from Miller's side of the table. As Miller sat down, Max decided this was the perfect moment to stretch. The dog extended his front legs forward and his rear up in the air, his tail wagging lazily. The reaction was immediate. Several Vordaks gasped. One dropped a device that clattered to the floor. Krell himself tensed visibly. "He's just stretching," Miller explained quickly. "It's a normal behavior. He means no harm." Krell's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that the beast is not preparing to attack?" "He's not a beast. He's a dog. His name is Max, and he's friendly." To demonstrate, Miller reached down and scratched Max behind the ears. The dog closed his eyes in contentment, leaning into Miller's hand. "How do you control it?" Krell asked, his voice a mixture of fear and fascination. "We have observed your broadcasts. Your species keeps many such predators. Do all humans possess this mental dominance?" Miller chose his words carefully. "We don't control them with our minds. Dogs have lived alongside humans for thousands of years. They protect us, help us, and keep us company. It's a partnership based on trust and respect." Krell seemed unconvinced. "And if you commanded it to attack?" Before Miller could answer, a mechanical arm on the ceiling moved suddenly, making a whirring noise. Max, startled by the sound, barked once, a short, sharp sound that echoed in the chamber. The effect was electric. Every Vordax in the room flinched. 2 of them rushed for the exit. Krell stood so quickly that his chair fell backward. "This meeting is over," Krell declared, his voice higher than before. "Return to your ship immediately." "But we haven't discussed." Now, Krell's 6 eyes were fixed on Max, who had already forgotten about the noise and was now sniffing curiously at the floor. "We will continue communications remotely." As Miller was escorted back to his shuttle, he heard Krell giving urgent orders. "Increase our defensive perimeter. Monitor all Earth communications. If they have more of these creatures, we must know." Back on the Horizon Miller gave his report to a stunned Earth Command while Max dozed peacefully at his feet, completely unaware that his single bark had just reshaped interstellar diplomacy. The emergency alarm blared through Earth Command headquarters. General Adams rushed into the control room, where screens displayed a grim situation. The small Earth outpost on Mars moon Phobos was under attack. "Status report," Adams barked. 3 Vordax ships appeared without warning, replied the officer on duty. They'd disabled the outpost communication array and landing bay. 32 personnel are trapped inside. Miller stood in the corner of the room, having been summoned when the attack began. Max sat beside him, sensing the tension and staying unusually still. "Why would they attack now?" Miller asked. The diplomatic meeting was tense, but they didn't seem ready for war. Dr. Wilson entered the room, her tablet displaying intercepted Vordax communications. "We have our answer. After your meeting, Commander Krull reported to the Vordax High Command that humans are far more dangerous than anticipated." She played a translated recording of Krull's voice. The human brought only one beast, yet controlled it perfectly. It stayed docile until the human allowed it to demonstrate its power. One vocalization was enough to show their capability. If each human commands such a creature, their threat is unimaginable. General Adams slammed his fist on the table. "They think we're more dangerous than we are, so they decided to strike first." "Sir," said a young officer, "the Phobos outpost is requesting emergency evacuation. The Vordax are threatening to board. All available ships are at least 3 hours away," another officer reported. The room fell silent. Then Miller stepped forward, Max following at his heels. "I have an idea," he said, "but it's going to sound crazy." 20 minutes later, a small transport ship was racing toward Phobos. Inside were Miller, Max, and 12 members of Earth's K9 military units with their dogs. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Rottweilers trained for search and rescue and security. "Remember," Miller told the K9 handlers, "we're not trying to start a fight. We just need to get our people out." The transport landed in a maintenance bay that the Vordax hadn't secured. The team quickly moved through the outpost's corridors, the dogs alert but quiet. When they reached the main level, they found the Earth personnel cornered by Vordax soldiers. "Stay behind me," Miller told the K9 unit. Then he stepped into view, Max at his side. "Commander Krull," Miller called out, spotting the Vordax leader supervising the operation. "This doesn't need to happen." Krull turned, his 6 eyes widening at the sight of Miller and Max. "Captain Miller, you are too late. This outpost is now under Vordax control." "I don't think so," Miller replied. He raised his hand and gave a simple signal. On cue, the K9 handlers stepped into view with their dogs. The Vordax soldiers reacted instantly, backing away in terror at the sight of multiple beasts. "As you can see," Miller said calmly, "we didn't come alone. These are just a few of our companions. Each trained, each loyal, each ready to protect us." To emphasize his point, one of the German shepherds barked, a sound that sent the Vordax into near panic. "You would unleash these creatures upon us." Krull's voice trembled slightly. "We don't want to," Miller said. "We came for our people. Let them board our transport, and we'll leave peacefully." Krull looked from the dogs to his soldiers, who were clearly terrified. His authority was at stake, but his options were limited. "Take your people and go," Krull finally ordered. "But this is not over, Captain Miller. The hegemony will not be intimidated." As the Earth personnel boarded the transport, Miller overheard a Vordax soldier speaking to another. "They control these beasts as if they were extensions of themselves. How can we fight a species with such power?" Back on Earth, Operation Good Boy was hailed as a decisive victory. News spread throughout human colonies. A dozen dogs had forced a Vordax retreat without firing a single shot. In the Vordax fleet, however, Commander Krull faced a different reality. His report to the hegemony described humans as dangerous beyond measure, capable of commanding vicious predators with mere gestures. Military strategies were redrawn. Fear spread through Vordax ships. And all because of a few wagging tails and wet noses. Dr. Lisa Reed hunched over her microscope in Earth Command's science lab, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. For weeks, she had been studying the limited data on Vordax biology. Something about their so-called beasts didn't make sense. "Captain Miller, you need to see this," she said without looking up as Miller entered the lab. Max trotted alongside him, now wearing a vest with Earth Ambassador embroidered on it, a half-joke that had somehow become official. "What am I looking at?" Miller asked, peering at the screen displaying microscopic images. "These are samples we collected from the Vordax ship's exterior during your diplomatic visit," Dr. Reed explained. "I've been comparing them to what we know about their biology and our own weapon systems." She pulled up another image. "This is what I believe their beasts actually are. Not predator species like they implied, but engineered parasites." Miller frowned. "Parasites?" "Yes. Based on my analysis, the Vordax have developed microscopic organisms that attach to a host's nervous system and cause extreme pain or death. Nasty biological weapons, but not actual monsters." "So they've been bluffing?" Miller asked, scratching Max behind the ears. "Possibly. Or maybe they genuinely believe that our dogs are similar weapons, biological entities we've engineered and control. There's only one way to find out." 3 days later, Miller and Max found themselves on a neutral space station where representatives from several spacefaring species occasionally met. The Vordax had agreed to send a scientific delegation after much negotiation. The meeting room was designed to keep both parties separated by a transparent barrier. The Vordax still unwilling to be in the same room as Max without protection. Commander Krell had sent a young scientist named Trell to lead the Vordax team. Unlike the others Miller had met, Trell seemed more curious than afraid, though he still flinched when Max moved suddenly. "Your beast appears well disciplined," Trell observed, watching as Max sat patiently by Miller's side. "He's not a beast," Miller explained for what felt like the 100th time. "He's a companion animal. We don't control him with technology or mental powers. We raise dogs from birth, feed them, care for them, and they bond with us naturally." Trell's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Miller had learned indicated skepticism. A natural bond with a predator species. Impossible. Miller thought for a moment, then took a risk. "Would you like to see for yourself? I can show you how Max and I interact." Trell hesitated, then nodded cautiously. Miller spent the next hour demonstrating basic commands: sit, stay, shake, and explaining how dogs were trained through positive reinforcement. He showed videos of puppies learning from their mothers, of working dogs helping humans, of elderly people with service animals. "And you're saying all humans have this ability?" Trell asked, clearly fascinated despite himself. "It's not an ability," Miller explained. "It's a relationship built on thousands of years of living together. Dogs evolved alongside us. They want to please us, and we provide for them. It's a partnership." As the demonstrations continued, Miller noticed Trell moving closer to the barrier, his fear gradually giving way to scientific curiosity. By the end of the session, Trell was just inches from the transparent wall, watching intently as Max performed tricks for treats. "May I?" Trell hesitated. "May I attempt to interact with the bee with Max?" Miller was surprised, but nodded. "Of course." With trembling hands, Trell pressed a button that opened a small section of the barrier, just enough for a hand to pass through. Miller guided Max forward. "Hold your hand out, palm down," Miller instructed. "Let him sniff you first." Trell extended one long, thin arm through the opening. Max sniffed curiously, then gently licked Trell's hand. The young Vordax scientist froze, then slowly relaxed. "He's warm," Trell said with wonder. Later that night, as Miller reported back to Earth Command, Trell was sending his own report to the Vordax fleet. He included detailed scans showing that Max had no implants, no signs of genetic engineering for weaponization, and most importantly, brain patterns that indicated genuine affection for his human companion. What Trell didn't include in his official report was how, when no one was watching, he had whispered to Max through the barrier, "You're not a monster at all, are you?" Commander Krell paced the bridge of his flagship, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. His 6 eyes darted between the tactical display and the reports from Trell's scientific mission. Earth lay before them, a blue-green jewel in the blackness of space, surrounded by the Vordax fleet. "Commander, All ships report ready, his second-in-command announced. Weapon systems primed. Biological containment units standing by. Krell paused, staring at Earth through the view screen. And Scientist Trell, confined to his quarters as ordered. His report has been classified as dangerous misinformation. Krell had read Trell's findings with growing anger. The young scientist claimed that Earth's beasts were not weapons but companions. That humans and dogs shared a natural bond formed over millennia. Impossible, dangerous thinking. It undermined everything the hegemony had built its power upon. The High Command expects results, Krell said. Prepare to broadcast our ultimatum to Earth. On the Horizon Asterisk, now stationed at Earth's defense perimeter, Miller received the emergency transmission. Max lay at his feet, sensing the tension and staying close. They're demanding full surrender, General Adams said over the video link. Krell is threatening to unleash their biological weapons on major population centers unless we agree to become a protectorate of the Vordax hegemony. Miller shook his head. This doesn't make sense. Trell was beginning to understand. He saw that dogs aren't weapons. Apparently, Commander Krell didn't appreciate those findings. Dr. Wilson added, joining the call. Our intelligence suggests Trell has been silenced. Miller looked down at Max, then back at the screen. Let me try something. One last attempt before this turns into a war neither side wants. What do you have in mind? General Adams asked. Something crazy. An hour later, Miller stood before a global broadcast system. Earth's combined military forces were on high alert, but everyone knew they were outgunned. The Vordax ships loomed in orbit, their weapons trained on the planet below. This is Captain James Miller, he began, looking directly into the camera. Max sat beside him. I'm speaking not just to Earth, but to the Vordax people. In the Vordax fleet, surprised communications officers reported that someone had bypassed their security protocols. The humans' broadcast was playing on every screen throughout their ships. You've been told that humans control dangerous beasts, Miller continued, that we're a threat to the hegemony. But you haven't been shown the truth. The broadcast switched to footage Miller had gathered. Children playing with puppies in parks, elderly people with therapy dogs, rescue workers and their canine partners pulling survivors from rubble, a blind man navigating a busy street with his guide dog. These aren't weapons, Miller's voice explained over the images. These are friendships, partnerships built on trust and care. The cameras returned to Miller, who knelt beside Max. Your leaders fear what they don't understand. They've told you that different means dangerous. But look at us, a human and a dog. Different species who found a way to live together, to help each other, to be better together than apart. Throughout the Vordax fleet, soldiers and crew members watched in silence. Many had never seen such images before. Their entire understanding of Earth had come through military briefings and Commander Krell's warnings. On his flagship, Krell ordered the transmission cut. This is propaganda. Prepare the first wave of biological weapons. But his crew hesitated. One brave communications officer spoke up. Commander, we're receiving transmissions from the other ships. The crews are questioning the attack order. What? Krell's voice rose to a shriek. This is treason. Sir, another officer said, Scientist Trell has escaped confinement. He's broadcasting his research findings to the entire fleet. On screens throughout the Vordax ships, Trell's face appeared alongside Miller's continuing broadcast. The young scientist spoke urgently. I have studied the Earth creatures. They are not weapons. They are living beings who choose to bond with humans. Our leaders have misunderstood, or deliberately missiled us. Krell watched in horror as his carefully constructed narrative crumbled. The view screen showed Miller still broadcasting, now walking through a dog shelter, showing how humans cared for abandoned animals, how they rescued and healed them. Cut transmission. Launch the attack. Krell screamed. But his officers stood motionless, their 6 eyes fixed on the screens where Miller was now explaining how humans and dogs had evolved together, helping each other survive. In that moment, as Miller's voice reached every corner of the Vordax fleet, the first seeds of doubt blossomed into something more powerful than fear. The bridge of Commander Krell's flagship erupted into chaos. Officers argued openly while Krell screamed commands that no one followed. The attack on Earth hung in uncertain balance as Miller's broadcast continued to play on every screen. "This is mutiny," Krell shrieked, drawing his ceremonial weapon. "I will execute anyone who defies." The doors to the bridge slid open. Trell entered, flanked by several senior officers. Their postures were straight, determined, no longer displaying the usual deference to Krell. "Commander Krell," Trell announced, his voice steady, "by order of Fleet Admiral Draz, you are relieved of command." Krell's 6 eyes widened in shock. "What? The High Command would never." "The High Command has been watching Captain Miller's broadcast," Trell explained. "They've seen the truth we've hidden from our people for generations. Our society was built on fear. Fear of predators that no longer threaten us. Fear of differences. Fear of the unknown." On Earth, Miller watched the Vordax ships with growing tension. Max sensed his anxiety and pressed against his leg. The planetary defense systems remained on high alert, but so far, the alien fleet had not launched their attack. "Something's happening," General Adams said, studying the sensor readings. "Their weapons systems are powering down." A communication request flashed on the main screen. When Miller accepted it, Trell's face appeared. "Captain Miller," the young scientist said, "on behalf of the Vordax Provisional Authority, I request a ceasefire and formal diplomatic relations with Earth." A cheer erupted throughout Earth Command. Miller knelt to hug Max, who responded with enthusiastic licks to his face, completely unaware of his role in preventing interstellar war. 3 months later, Miller stood in a large garden specially created for the first official Earth-Vordax cultural exchange. The space had been designed to make both species comfortable, with open areas for humans and sheltered spaces where Vordax could retreat if they felt overwhelmed. Miller watched as a group of Vordax civilians cautiously approached a fenced area containing several dogs of different breeds. Each alien moved with a mixture of instinctive fear and newly discovered curiosity. "They're still nervous," Trell observed, now wearing the insignia of Vordax ambassador to Earth. "Thousands of years of evolutionary fear doesn't disappear overnight." "But they're trying," Miller replied. "That's what matters." They watched as a small Vordax child, the first to visit Earth, reached a trembling hand toward a patient Labrador. The dog gently sniffed the offered hand, then gave it a soft lick. The child jumped back in surprise, then slowly returned, a sound like quiet laughter escaping from its mouth. "What happened to Krell?" Miller asked, realizing he had never heard the former commander's fate. "He's been assigned to our historical revision committee," Trell said with what Miller now recognized as the Vordax equivalent of a smile. "He's documenting how our leadership manipulated our natural fears to maintain control. It's humbling work for him." A commotion drew their attention. Max had spotted Miller across the garden and was bounding toward him, golden fur shining in the sunlight. Several Vordax visitors stepped back in alarm, but didn't flee in terror as they once would have. "The old me would have seen a monster," Trell said, watching Max approach. "Now I see." "A good boy," Miller finished with a smile, kneeling to greet his friend. To Miller's surprise, Trell slowly knelt beside him. The Vordax ambassador hesitantly extended his hand. Max sniffed it, recognized Trell's scent from their previous meetings, and pushed his head against the alien's palm. "He remembers me," Trell whispered, wonder in his voice as he carefully stroked Max's fur. "Of course he does," Miller said. "Dogs are good at remembering friends." Trell's fingers gently scratched behind Max's ears, mimicking what he had seen Miller do. The dog's eyes closed in contentment, leaning into the touch. In his own language, so softly that the translation device barely caught it, Trell whispered words that would have been unthinkable just months before. "What a cute pup." Across the galaxy, Images were being shared of the fearsome beast that had terrified the mighty Vordax hegemony, now shown fetching a ball, rolling in grass, and accepting treats from trembling alien hands. These pictures became the symbol of the new alliance, different species learning that what seems frightening at first glance might, with patience and understanding, become a friend. And Max, blissfully unaware of his role in galactic politics, was simply happy to have more people to play with.